Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because infrastructure is important in terms of the resiliency of infrastructure in this climate crisis that we're facing. It kind of ties into our next story and our next guest. Bloated timelines and cost blowouts often come hand in hand, of course, with large-scale construction projects. We see this time and time again. But one UK company says it can help developers reduce waste and speed up work, all thanks to AI. nPlan, which is backed by Google Ventures, uses machine learning software to forecast project outcomes. Its clients include oil giant Shell and construction firm Skanska. It's also worked on the contentious HS2 rail project here in the UK. Very pleased to say we're joined by co-founder and CEO Dev Amratia. Dev also helping to craft in 2017 the UK's AI strategy under the former Prime Minister Theresa May. Dev, thanks for coming to the studio. Let's talk about some of the use cases then of your AI platform. A lot of hype, of course, around ChatGPT. I really wanted to speak to you because I'm really interested in how your platform is actually helping materially, in a real sense, companies right now. Talk to us about the use cases.
The biggest use case we see is figuring out how long a construction project is most likely to take, what risks they have to execute these projects, and crucially, what they can do about these risks. Essentially, the problem is it's incredibly difficult to foresee how much risk you're taking onto yourself when you're building these projects, right? At the start, it's quite hard to figure all of this out, given the complexity of these projects.
So give us some case studies. You know, you talk about HS2, and in fact, in the news meeting yesterday, Anna raised the point, well, hang on, HS2 has been delayed a few times. Can you account for those delays, and can you give us some case studies as to where you've seen material impact and efficiencies created around the forecasting and the risks involved in some of these projects?
Certainly. Probably the one I'm most proud of to date, and there are a number of them by now, is a project in North America that's a very large oil and gas system, LNG to be specific. So you're talking about tens of billions of dollars of investment. To date, we've helped them avoid spending $180 million just by telling them, hey, in advance, that thing over there is probably not going to work out the way you think it will. So the team, using this information that our AI algorithm generated for them, are able to take corrective action before they need to spend the additional money.
Okay, so that's a real life example of how it saves these projects and these contractors money. So you use this data, which has been trained on historical performance from 740,000 projects, I understand. And so when you take this to the industry and to potential clients, do you find they all want to jump on this extra information, or are they doubtful that it can tell them anything that they don't know already? I just wonder how an industry responds to this kind of new tool, because you're kind of putting a lot of faith in a bit of a black box.
Yeah. So at first, there are skeptics. You know, we've been going for 6 years now. We recently won the McRobert Prize for Engineering Excellence and Innovation, one of the most prestigious awards in innovation in the UK. But over those 6 years, we've learned how to show the forecast's legitimacy. This is a complex problem. How do you know a forecast, something in the future of time, is correct today?
Yeah,
right?
Especially when you might not be able to explain why it's correct.
Yes. So what we do is we have the most rigorous back test you can imagine, right? We pretend it's 2015 again, and we forecast 100,000 projects, right? Which is a lot of projects, a huge diversity out there. And we'll be able to tell how good, and also where we might not be very good at forecasting, right? The algorithm is actually humble in a way. It knows how to say when it doesn't know something, you know, perhaps the sector could use a bit more of, we could all use a bit more of.
You've talked about some of the cost-saving examples. There's obviously a big push and a big conversation in the UK and other places about unlocking spending for infrastructure projects and why so much cash remains on the sidelines, unwilling to be committed. Are you seeing any change there? Is there anything that you're doing that can help get that capital into some of these projects?
Yes. The mission of nPlan is to build a world no longer limited by its appetite in risk. I fundamentally believe, my entire team believes, humanity is held back because we just can't take investment decisions.
Have you had conversations with executives saying, okay, I am prepared now to commit additional capital because I have a clearer forecast?
Yes. So the example is with Kia Group. We worked with them when they were bidding for the Oxford Station redevelopment program, £65 million project with Network Rail. Kia used nPlan's forecast to increase their confidence to their client, Network Rail, that they have the ability to understand and execute on the project, right? It increases investor confidence, allowed them, they won the work, right? It's being built right now. And so, yes, certainly.
Okay.
It's interesting when you make the pitch for what AI can do here. You kind of conceptually, I'm interested in the biases you want to include in the data and the ones you don't, because the advantage of using this data is it can remove the biases of the team that are working on this, I suppose, in some ways. But aren't there some biases that might be actually quite relevant, like recency bias? You know, if it recently has cost this much and taken this long, you need to know that versus a project that happened 10 years ago, which maybe is less relevant. So how do you sort of work through all of that?
Yeah. So what we can do is we figure out the algorithm understands that something that happened yesterday is the best indicator of what will happen tomorrow, and equally the further the spreads become. But the beautiful thing about the data that we're analyzing across this huge sample, it's like $1.6 trillion of capital in analysis in nPlan today, and only growing. That data is unequivocal. It's what they plan to do on the projects and what happened. No biases. You're not allowed to say there's no biases involved in reality. And bringing that forward is a very impartial way of being able to articulate to a customer what might happen to them.
Dev, you think about forecasting, think about risk, and it makes me think about the insurance industry. Talk to us about your ambitions in that space. You're quite bold in terms of what you think you can change within insurance in that sector.
Yes. So today, we forecast projects. We can do that for a single project. We've just launched a product around portfolios of projects, so we can analyze hundreds of projects simultaneously. The very next step, we're saying we're very, very good, to at least 10 times better than anyone else on the planet at forecasting projects. The next step is for us to start taking the risk. And that is code word for insurance. That means we aim to launch a product called Project Overrun Insurance. Basically, as it says on the tin can, we will be able to write the risk of an overrun, dramatic overrun, on a project into the insurance markets. Something quite challenging to bring to market today, given the cost of debt and where we are in the insurance markets. But certainly we have the data, we have the technology, and hope to bring to market soon.
Okay, that sounds like a fascinating new business line, I suppose, new industry to be going into. In terms of AI in the UK, and Tom started this conversation mentioning how you were involved in writing that a report for the UK government 5 years or so ago, I think, under a previous administration about the state of AI. The conversation seems to have moved on, both in terms of the amount that we all know about AI, the use of it, ChatGPT and the like, helping a lot, but also our fears around it, some of them existential in nature. How do you look ahead to the UK conversation around AI? Because the UK wants to lead on this, doesn't it? Especially around regulation with this conference coming up in Bletchley Park.
Yes. So firstly, I'm incredibly proud of the pace that it's moved at. Back in 2017, when we started writing the report, we never thought there would be so much advancement here in the UK. The conversation that's starting now here in the UK is a real advantage for the country to capitalize on. Taking advantage of the fact that we are the first to be thinking and talking and convening in the subject of safety is something I think is the right step. Some of the things that I think we could do more of, right, is bringing together the people that are doing it in the world, in the real world, right? There are very practical examples of organizations that are implementing safe practices. I mean, nPlan is one of them. I told you about the back tests, right? That's a way of showcasing how do you do things properly. Don't just make your way into the industry and hope to disrupt it, right? There's a good way of doing business in a way that is sustainable for the people that are consuming this huge amounts of information, all of a sudden generated by an algorithm, which is not something most human beings are very comfortable or even familiar with.
Okay. nPlan co-founder and CEO Dev Amratia, thank you very much for coming to the studio on The View around how AI is being implemented on the ground around construction infrastructure, maybe a move into insurance at some point, and the prospects for the UK around AI safety. Thank you.